Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's our chess show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and our today's guests are Professor Ken Regan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me
Great,
on again after 2 weeks.
great to have you as always. And also we have Jim Eid from Eid Foundation. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you, Sasha. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, listen, by the name of in this tournament last week in Collingwood, name of your chess foundation was prominently displayed as one of the sponsors of the tournament.
That's
And the tournament was very, very well organized, a beautiful hotel, a nice space. Um, the only problem with this tournament was that I played very badly.
Yes,
No,
that's
not
always
good.
a downer.
Yeah, other than that, it was a great tournament. But you know what happened is that okay, I was getting first position. Then I would slowly equalize. And the moment that I was near that point, I started to play for a win, and with the riskiest continuations and so on. That didn't work. That didn't work well at all, and also I did some colossal blunders as to continue my aggressive strategy. So I would make some horrible moves, and I'm glad it's all over. And but I don't regret it. At the end of the day, I got 2 out of 5 minus one, so it's not the end of the day. Maybe next year I will be.
Maybe not. You won last year, so you can't
I
win.
won last year, yeah. You know what? Actually, it's better to have one very bad result than one very good one
Yeah,
instead of two mediocre results, because two mediocre results yield you nothing. And
I agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm not complaining.
Mhm.
So what else interesting is happening? We have this tournament, Grand Chess Tour, going on, and it's unheard of that both the candidates for the World Championship play a few days later. They're playing in this tournament.
Yeah,
Both.
applaud both of them, sure.
I never seen that happen.
Never.
How about you?
Yeah.
Never.
I asked last week if Miguel had ever seen it, and he said, he came up with the Korchnoi and Kasparov, I think, but they didn't play. They got, so this was, I think, an unprecedented.
Unprecedented.
They so difficult to match against one another and then playing such a strong tournament. And I think the results are showing it. I think they're both fatigued and not playing their best right now.
Yeah.
So
That's
who's
okay.
showing the best chess in this tournament? Is it Caruana, in your opinion?
Yeah, Caruana, he's playing a very professional game today. He is winning.
Oh, I didn't see it. What's happened in that game?
It's happening right now. I can try to show it.
Yeah, if you can.
And Wesley So too. I think he's a little better today too. But
Mhm.
Yes. So let's see. Let's see if I can
No, I
share-
was impressed with Nepa falling down to Caruana in very convincing
yeah.
fashion.
Yeah, and that doesn't, he seems to be an emotional player, and he doesn't seem to have his heart in it. That might be an exaggeration on my part, but that's what I took away from his results.
Mhm.
Yeah. So let me know when.
Okay. Now we can see it.
Yeah, you can see Firouzja Caruana. Yes, so it's a very interesting opening too. So Slav defense or Catalan, I'm not sure. I guess it would be Slav if White played D4, but White doesn't.
No,
Now White plays D4. So I'm not sure how you would categorize this. I still say it's still Catalan family, clearly, but White hasn't played Bishop G2 yet.
no, we need the ECO code.
Yeah, that's right. So, okay. So now White still hasn't played Bishop G2, but there's some interesting play here about stopping White from playing E4. So Black plays that.
Yeah.
Now White still can't play E4. Black counterattacks against D4 before E4 becomes a consideration. So now you don't have to worry about E4 as much. Now White plays B4,
Yeah.
and B4, wow, you look at this position, you think, well, let's see, B4, does White get enough counterplay with Rook B1, or is Black vulnerable to A4 and Bishop A3? There's a slight problem of this, though. So Black can't take the ball. So okay. So now bishop b2. Okay, so now white regains the pawn, and we have a fairly normal symmetrical position, but where white still has, is white a step ahead in development? Maybe.
Well,
White has a little initiative because the b4 pawn can do something, and white gangs up
this
on
is
that
really
file.
interesting, Ken. I'm really fascinated by this because there was big fight over e4, and now White was going to get it in, and Black's done everything to prevent it.
Mhm.
And now we have this interesting queenside setup. So I don't know this opening well enough to comment intelligently on it, but this is really good play as far as I can tell.
Yes, it's probably very good. It's a slight advantage for white. So white, according
Yeah.
to the engine, white has cente initiative. Probably white's pawns are a little bit more advanced than black's. So okay.
Well, it's almost symmetrical. So I don't.
Yeah. I don't mean white's pawns are more advanced. I mean that white has easier to quantify pressure against black's position.
I can see that. Yeah.
The rook, white is a rook out, black's rook is not out.
Correct.
And white now takes over a center square. Black, I mean, what's really, if you take any of these positions where white is to move and make it black to move, it's completely equal. Just a case of.
And the knights are better placed than black's knights, so this is slight, but still better for white.
Yeah. So you have to go, and there are a lot of concrete calculations that have to be made about positions where the b7 and e7 pawns are taken versus can black get the a pawn and white's e2 pawn.
Also, there is a little threat of, for example, rook d3, queen goes elsewhere, and knight g4 threatening knight h6.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, that's true. Like black isn't blocking this diagonal. That's a very good point too.
Yeah, because you get the open file, you get the long diagonal, and the knights get in the picture. It's starting to be an attack, even with reduced material.
Yeah, in fact, actually, let's look at how black defends, because this is the first line of the engine. So now, how does black defend against the mate threat here? Well, the answer is f6 is one solid defense.
It does seem solid enough.
Yeah. So and otherwise, in fact, there is no other defense. So queen h5 is too awkward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an important resource to know, that black's f6 doesn't make any other pieces factually loose, because black's knight on e6 is not in any trouble. So anyway, so let's see. Oops, and I had to go reset the way the game actually went. Oops. Oh yeah, there's a way to do it here. Oops. Yeah, let's see. Oh, here we go. Okay, so where was I? I was at. Let's pick it up from here.
Right.
Okay. Now, so white did play rook d3, and black did play bishop queen c5. Oh, I should have checked to see if those are the moves actually played. And instead of knight g4, Caruana played rook d7, the obvious consequent move. Again, taking advantage of the fact that white has this one-step initiative. White's rook is more active. And black decides to guard e7, thus taking back his counterplay on the a file.
That I wonder about that.
Yeah.
I don't have a better suggestion though. But.
Yeah. So a4, now black is able to trade off a pair of knights, and that probably was the plan. So this takes black's queen off of e7. So now e7 is guarded. Now white did play one more move. Caruana played queen b5. So that's interesting. That's actually making white's a pawn into a more advanced b pawn that caused black trouble. The line that I was looking at previously, which is currently given as the first line, leads to a fundamental endgame. So the question is, does white have realistic winning chances in this position with 4-on-3 on the king side?
I think with just the knights, I would say it's probably drawish. But
yeah,
queen and knight, then you have tactics as well. So I'm not sure.
Right, because black's lack of a pawn also translates into weaker squares, and the queen
Right.
and knight can team up. So you can imagine if white is able to sink his queen on f6, knight on e5, and advance e4 and f4, with black not being able to harass white's king profitably, then that is actually quite a worry. But of course, there are a lot of moves that would occur before that could be played. Also, in this position, advancing white's h pawn could be effective.
Yeah, that white has tactics as well as the extra pawn.
Yeah, because if black responds h5, then there are white sacrificing a knight on g6s in the air, and white's queen and four pawns against queen and knight could be a handful to keep track of.
I would think the computer would easily make a draw with black pieces, but a human being
would suffer.
May get exhausted and suffer tremendously.
Yeah, well, actually, so there's a little trick I play with computers is sometimes when you advance in a line, the eval changes. But here, actually, the computer is saying that either h5 or knight g7 is a sure enough defense. Well, and white's knight is pinned, so maybe black has achieved a reasonable defensive setup.
Right.
But it is something to consider. However, Caruana actually played queen b5, which it has to be said, this preserves more tension in the position. Doesn't win a pawn, but it preserves the nature that white is calling the shots. White is the rook on the 7th rank. Black has to defend.
Right.
And right now, black has to defend the b pawn, and looks like black has to shed the e pawn right away.
You know, we were always taught that an active rook is more important than the pawn. You know, so you know this seems like a good strategic play by Caruana, and just not to win a pawn into an ending that might be drawn anyways, but to keep the pressure on with the active rook versus the passive rook.
Yeah. So we, in fact, have more moves. Black is actually fairly clearly from the evaluation forced to trade queens. So, but black played knight c5, thinking about activity more. So,
wow.
Now this is said by the computer to be a stronger edge than what black could have had by giving away the pawn and getting the rook onto the d file.
Right.
So this is the current position in the game right now as we speak, and
wow,
black will be passive. Yeah.
So knight c4 is probably possible.
Yeah. So if we play these two moves, then white can collect the b pawn.
Yeah.
And
well,
with an extra b pawn, there's a lot more winning chances. So actually, the engine wants me to play knight e6 here. Okay, and then
rook c6 maybe.
Yeah, rook c6, rook a5. Yeah, so actually, this is what I mean. That sometimes when you play ahead, this is a narrow path, knight e4, and if another fact is found out about that line, then this position might in fact be completely lost for black.
I like the fact that there's pawns on both wings. That's more winnable to me than when they're all on the same side, even though you have a 4-on-3 majority. I've drawn too many of those types of endings.
That's quite right. So, okay, so this is back to the current position. Then also perhaps significant, according to the clock, Firouzja is only 2 minutes and change. So, so black may have to make some very difficult choices. For instance, in that position I was showing before, the knight e4 move is not so obvious for black optically. So,
Firouzja's had a pretty good tournament too, Ken, hasn't he? I think
who's this?
Firouzja. I think he's had a pretty good tournament so far.
Yes, well, he beat Ding last round, and that game is worth showing. And then he had this deadpan, or whatever you want to call it, quote saying Ding is easier to beat than the previous world champion, which is maybe is a fair comment, I'd have to say. But anyway, so we got this anti-Berlin system, transposing essentially into a kind of Joker piano. And so a lot of strategic depth has been shown in these positions. It's not a way to go for an advantage for move one, but just to outplay the opponent, maneuvering game. And so H3 and then rook E1 were consequent, so that I couldn't molest the F2 square.
Right.
And now white is just slowly trying to increase influence of the pieces. It's not clear that black is able to do the same unless black can sink a knight into F4. So black actually chooses to put the bishop there. Now maybe knight would come to F4, except the white has a lot of air to play G3. So black is trying to soften up the F4 square and the dark squares around white's king.
But I'm not too worried if I'm white.
Yeah, not. In fact, you forced an exchange that arguably gives white pressure on the F file. And that is, in fact, the mechanism by which Firouzja was able to win this game. So white ceded a pawn, but this is an open position. The two bishops are really happy here. And I think actually, if this is the game that I was watching, I think there is one point when the engine shows black is better. But if I had been on the show, I would have put in a comment saying this sort of position is the sort of position in which the tactics ultimately favor white anyway. That black would have to be superhuman, and this was the position. So it's a witch knight situation in a moment. Okay. So anyway, so rook e8 actually made it equal. Black will be better again in a moment. Okay, and so this is the key position. No, actually, two more moves. Yeah, okay, so black played e4. I thought it was a case of which
now
knight
I kind of do like black.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, maybe, but I don't know. I mean,
I don't know either. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no direct threat on white's king, whereas there's latent threats on both the A1 to H8 diagonal and, of course, the A2 to G8 diagonal. Like F6 and F7 are just a worry. You know, there are positions where I'm a pawn ahead, or I can tell I've got a positional clamp, but I've got this one bone in my throat that I can't shake. And it always annoys me when I'm playing. So this is the situation. Okay, so E3, yeah, black is much better. And this is the position where black played the wrong knight to E4. So this is very instructive. And there was sort of why did it matter which knight you played to E4? So if this knight goes to E4, then we'll want giving up this pawn, of course.
Right.
Rook T1, Rook T1. So what's the difference? The difference is that this is a strong move, and then black is able to come in to E4. And on the broadcast of the show, they were looking at positions also where black played, instead of playing Queen E4 check right away, played Queen D7. In fact, that's now what the engine has changed over to. That this was even stronger, coming in this way and this way. So, all right, so that's perhaps a judgment of the tactics coming from that position. So why was the move in the game such a bad move? It's ultimately because the F7 pawn wasn't really being defended after all, and you enable white to trade off one of black's attackers. So here we go. Bishop takes F7, and so
yikes
is right. There goes your queen. And so now there's another interesting part of this game, which is a misjudgment by black. Okay, so the question is, should black just sit with the rook behind the pawn, or should black try to generate play by getting the rook to the F file, maybe tucking the king away on the queen side where it can't be checked, and trying to get play with the rook on the 7th rank and the threat to advance the pawn? And is that a way to keep white's pawns at bay?
I mean,
well, that's
even to the D file, it seems to me like, that I'm not sure how white proceeds. It seems like activating the rook would be my gut instinct.
So
Yeah.
Rook G8
G8
probably was
maybe making the most sense. Yeah, but now, so the thing is that so the funny thing is that in all these positions where Black's rook becomes active, it actually boomerangs, and maybe I don't quite understand because this certainly looks like a good policy, but after King E1, I guess the White just poses the question, what are you doing? And let's see. Well, rook takes B2.
Right.
I have no idea why this is winning for White. I guess eventually the point is that a queen and a Black's rook is out of play and will be unable to defend against an eventual advance on the king side, queen and a pawn. White's C3 pawn is keeping Black's bishop out of D4 and is easy to guard.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is very instructive because my instinct would be I would prefer to play Black. And now that we're looking at it deeper, I can see that you really can't make progress with the king on E1 unless you can check it. And with that C3 pawn is just a barrier.
Yeah. Yeah. So
interesting.
So it's a very, very interesting fact that if Black had just sat in this position with the king and rook guarding the king side, then maybe there's no way for White to make progress. I mean, White has an obvious plan of advancing on the king side, but with Black's rook on E6, perhaps that can just guard all the necessary squares. As Black, I would be worried about a White advance on the queen side as well. But apparently White can't knock the bishop off that diagonal. So anyway, so this was a misjudgment by Ding. And now White gets the king to the E3 square. Okay, rook, you can come in. But now Black can't even defend the G pawn conveniently.
I can really understand why he made this error in judgment.
Yeah. So we got the kind of position we were just talking about, but now Black is not going to be able to guard this G pawn, and so Black tries,
that makes all the difference in the world. Yeah.
It's not mate. It's well, you maybe Black can make a queen. Let's see, can you make a queen with E2? Let's see, why not? No, White's going to make a queen first,
right? And it's going to be more deadly, right?
Yeah, and then so now. Black gave up because G6 and queening is happening while Black's pawn will not get off E3.
Yeah.
So
it does seem like it was an unnecessary breakdown. You could have defended, but I can understand the desire to activate the rook.
Yeah, could probably maybe was winning with the other knight to E4.
Right.
I still think it was more difficult to play for Black. That at least was my maybe.
We're used to the question which rook, not so much which knight.
Yeah, which yeah. Maybe I'm being amateurish here because I was just spectating while writing lecture notes for my last lecture, but that still was my impression. So.
Well, the tournament is still going on, and it's. Getting closer now to the middle. Actually, it's already second half. I think.
Yeah.
But
Caruana's first, and so is second, and they're both doing well in this round. They're certainly not going to lose, either one of them, from what I saw earlier, anyways. And so it's a good representation. And Report. I'm sorry, how do you say his name? Report.
Report. Yeah.
Yeah. He was Ding's second.
Yes,
he's doing well as well.
Yeah,
he seems to be playing well.
I'll share my screen once more because we have two more moves in the game, and it's very instructive what has happened. So Let's see. You see the board now. This is where we left off.
Okay.
And so White did play knight C4.
Right.
Black played knight A4, which was the more passive move.
Right.
More passive option compared to the option of knight E6.
Knight E6.
Now White plays knight E3, and now Black lashes out. Well, with E6, but my goodness, why? I guess you did not want White's knight to come into D5, but this, creates a gust of wind on the 7th rank.
Knight G4.
Yeah, knight G4. Yeah, my goodness.
Wow.
Black defend against that.
Yeah, it's just instinctively wrong to give him the seventh rank like that.
Right. Yeah.
It just violates all my principles and without looking at any continuations.
And black is down to 1 minute now for the last 5 moves. Still five very key moves. So this now, well, the engine says white is ahead too, which usually a winning advantage. So this looks certainly good for Fabi.
Yeah, maybe it's time pressure. He's just saying, "Oh, I can't allow knight d5. I got to stop it."
Yeah, it is instructive that positions with equal material, where you might say, black's defending all this stuff. You know, if you saw this game between 2 club players, you might not think too much of it, but at this level, this is probably a winning advantage for white.
Right.
And I had to say, white has other ideas. Well, this putting the H pawn forward is probably going to be dangerous in some lines. You know, even though the pawn position looks symmetrical, black is just so much more exposed. White can attack things that black can't. So,
No, knight g4 is like a little. What are you going to play? F5 or knight?
You got to play it rook f.
you have to play rook f8 because there's a fork. Yeah, and then then knight h6 check, king h8, and the computer wants to play h4. There's that plan coming in. And
yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, white's knight can now get to d6 via f7, and black is really tied down. So that the other dilemma here, just play a few moves. Okay, so now I've played a few moves, and the real dilemma in this kind of position is that the h5, you know, you want to have the luxury of being able to ignore it, but allowing h6 would just be curtains in this kind of position.
Right.
So black has to gear up to take it. I don't know if white plays g4 and h5, then that's going to renew the threat of the h pawn coming down. But in any event, black's pawn structure will certainly be disturbed.
Yeah, you're going to end up with a passed pawn on the king side. And
yeah.
Probably.
And,
well, what you were saying earlier about club players versus players of this caliber, you know, we used to say it's just a matter of technique. If you have technique.
Yeah, right. Yes.
And, you know, just making the incremental progress, activating the rook, choosing to activate the rook rather than win a pawn. You know, those are the types of things that you learn by experience or maybe instruction. But, you know, that's been just a really good rule of thumb in my playing career was always activate the rooks. You know, just time and again that would prove to be the case. And when you end with your rook passive, you know, your drawing chances just went way down. You know, activating it was always the better choice. And you know, everything else being equal, of course, you know, that you don't do it if it's going to lose material. But you know, if it was just a question of activating the rook versus holding on to a pawn, activating the rook seemed to be the right idea.
Right. Yeah.
Well, tell us.
And you know, you chose to activate the rook, and it seems to have been paying off.
Kent, is there a great difference in the strength of play between classical time control in this match and what they played in these rapid games?
In the World Championship match? No, I just played a Kramnik's video at ChessBase India. It's a very interesting video, which I could highlight. And Kramnik said, you know, the rapid games were not only thrilling to watch, but they were played at a very high level. And he thought even a higher level than the classical match.
That's what I thought.
And modulo some very high error bars, that is exactly the conclusion that I reach.
Wow.
So now I can show my Facebook page. Oh, yeah, I'll just read it. My IPRs for the rapid games, you know, using the method of weighting all moves equally, was that Ding played at 2770 plus or minus 315. Now, one thing that needs to be said, this was game 25 rapid plus 10 seconds per move, which gives 35 minutes to turn 60. So it's appreciably slower than the game 15 plus 10 usual way of playing rapid. And that depresses the ELO quality, though, by something like 175, 180, 185 points.
But
What
not
depresses-
25 plus 30, right?
Right. So this, therefore, 2770 strength at this kind of rapid would be typical of a performance of 2950 in standard chess.
Wow.
But there are huge error bars. It's plus or minus 315. So that means, and those are error bars of a measurement. So my model is saying, yeah, I get a high figure for ding, but big lump of salt here, because even my measurement could possibly be off. Not less the notion of any inference of a player's strength or form from the value.
And off by a significant margin.
Right.
Yeah.
So for Nepo, I got 2615 with the same plus or minus 315 error bars.
Right.
So again, that's actually typical of playing 2800 level at standard chess. And for both combined, I got 2700 with smaller error bars plus or minus 215. But that's still saying it could have been anywhere between 2500 and 2900. It's only 4 games. Oh yeah, 185 ELO downflow.
Small sample size, right?
Yeah. But on the other hand, the measurement values themselves give a most probable outlook on it. So to say that the quality of the rapid games was higher than the standard games, I just need, objectively, I just need the measurement to be above 2650, 2660, and it was.
Right.
It's 2700. So I'm therefore agreeing modulo a lot of error bars. In the Facebook post, I said, the error bars are so big that these are junk stats. But nevertheless, for what they are, they agree with Kramnik's statement.
How can we explain that?
Just concentration or different competitive motivation. Maybe in the rapid games you conserve your energy a little more or play more carefully. I don't know. Or just the length of time. Concentration. You could say,
because it is counterintuitive that the faster time controls will produce better moves.
It is.
Yeah.
And nevertheless, I saw the same thing from Carlsen, especially in the tie breaks against Caruana and Karyakin. So
I would like to mention that I think I mentioned that on some programs already. In 1989, I was in London, and there were matches. Karpov was playing, I think, Yusupov, and Spillman was playing another English player, I've forgotten. Probably Timon. I think he was playing Timon. And I visited these matches, and I met David Bronstein, who was also in London at that time. And we spent many hours together discussing chess or so on. And of course, even at that time, he was a big proponent of rapid chess versus classical chess. And he asked me, do you really think that these players are sitting for 2.5 hours for 40 moves or whatever was time control at the time? Do you think that they're all spending their time to calculate variations and so on, and therefore the level of play is so much higher than rapid when they have only 25 minutes? Absolutely not.
I didn't.
They are talking, they're sitting, and they're thinking about that. In my previous game, I should have come with 9 to 6 instead of.
Yes, so many times.
I do it, and I've analyzed this position, and then he would think about the wrong order in the restaurant, that he should have go for rare steak, and instead he's got some kind of fish, and he ate this fish. They are not really working for 5 hours at the board.
Yeah, I wondered about that.
Now it comes a lot of discussions during this tournament in Collingwood. People, in order to participate in this tournament, people have to spend 3 days travel expenses, hotel, which was quite expensive, couple hundred a night, and they're playing one game at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then another one at 3 in the afternoon. Okay, so the games they will play, say one game on certain level, it's taken say an average hour and a half, maybe two, and another second game hour and two. And then you have essentially the rest of the day, both in the morning, especially in the evening, you have nothing to do with yourself. So you came there, you spent your time and money, and what value are you getting for it? Zilch, zero, absolutely nothing. So if I would organize this type of tournament, I would pact it with actions. First of all, not this classical control game. Nobody needs it. It was Botvinnik at his times, that this is an art form. And now when you reduce it to this repeat game, it's no longer the art now. So where did you see art in the classical games of Ding and Nepa? Where was that art? I couldn't find it. I found more art in the repeat games and in the stupid.
I love your point. I love it.
Okay, so therefore you pack it and you make a pickup speed tournaments here and there. Okay, you got group of 4 players, they're willing to play. Okay, offer them price, say $25. Play elimination matches or play just all like round robin or so on. Bring back gammon tournaments. Do something, entertain people. Don't just give them chess sets, and they have everything. They have chess sets, chess clocks, beautiful rooms. How not to use it? Why would you spend so much effort for so little?
I want to double down on what you're saying. Is that Botvinnik was mistaken in saying that it was the art that was missing. He was a scientific approach, and his was a scientific approach. And the longer the classical time periods were, the more science was, and sometimes, as you point out, mistakenly attributed to it. It was more scientific game, but the art is something that was evident in those rapid games.
Also, you see, before the computer time, so whoever was world champion of the world could be worshipped as the greatest genius of all time. This is a supreme intellectual, supreme human being, and so on. Now with computers, all this becoming garbage because a little some kind of a cheap outplay all of them, including Magnus Carlsen. No draws. Maybe the something like Alpha Zero. Maybe they should give a move and a pawn, and maybe Carlsen would make up draws. I wouldn't say that he'll do better than that. So now it's become all obsolete. So now it's all more situation to me reminds tennis, when there is all Grand Slams and one Grand Slam wins one player and the next Grand Slam the second player, and nobody worries who is the best of the best and so on. One day this guy he's in a better form, he's playing well, so he became a champion.
That's why these grand tours, like the one going on in Budapest, that is consistent with what you're saying, Sasha, I think.
Yeah, agree. And it's entertaining. You're not watching two faces every day.
Yes, right. And it's just one game, and there's so much time before a move is played, and here you can skip around between multiple games. And
I was watching these games, and I was trying to figure out which face do I hate more, Nepa or Dean. Really? I was touching myself. Oh, this guy is really ugly. But then I look at the other and say, oh, he's even uglier. Absolutely incredible.
Hey, I have one point to make and then one question to ask. Okay. One is I think of Walter Brown when we talk about concentration. And I was a superficial player, and I never got in time trouble. I always knew that I would be daydreaming if I just sat there and started thinking that long for a period. But Walter was really working. But he was really also a great blitz player. So I don't know if all that work and calculation, the first move that he wanted to play was usually the best. He was so good, so strong at blitz.
Yeah. It's an old saying, playing by hand. Get your brain out. It's
Yeah.
your
So-
head
so-
is the most important
He
weapon.
would think and think and think and get in terrible time pressure, and then bang off excellent moves. You know, it's
Yeah.
like I think you're onto something about you know, that a lot of the time that we spend where the clock is running, we're not actually calculating. We're not actually doing the work of chess. We're kind of daydreaming. And the question I had was, I was interested if Ken has ever done any study of seconds and their performance after, because I noticed that report is playing very well here, but I've also noticed that seconds in the past, like I know that you know, Roman sometimes was a second, and other players that I knew were seconds, and then they came out and their performance was very strong,
Of course, because
helping someone else prepare, because
they
they
were-
didn't have the fatigue of the match playing themselves.
Yeah, that's something, you know, I've heard anecdotally, but I need to gather the instances and the data. So you need to. I guess I should just. So you mean seconds of the championship matches specifically? I guess I could gather that.
Well,
Since
you
you
know, the
mentioned
candidates
Walter-
matches in the past, and you know, and it was like starting there would be fine. I just think that the seconds in the high level, the highest competitions where they're really having to work, I think that would help their performance. And I think it's almost intuitively obvious to say, but I don't know if it would be backed up by statistics.
I'd like to add something to what you earlier discussing, the playing by hand. Get up your brains, which are no good anyway. I saw during this World Chess Festival in St. John in Canada in 1988, when Tal became world champion in Blitz. And I spent a lot of time now and I with Tal during these few days, and we were watching almost like all his, not just tournament games, but private games. And he would play,
Right.
for example, Rafael Vaganyan and Kirill Georgiev. They were playing until 5 in the morning with a lot of vodka thrown in. And what I noticed very interesting thing, Tal would defending end game, and he was a little bit down on time as well. So let's see, a king, knight, and 4 pawns against king, knight, and bishop, and 3 pawns. So he had 1 pawn for a piece.
Right.
Down.
Insufficient.
And what was happening is that he was talking to me and Nava, and at the same time he didn't punch the clock. He was playing momentaneously. He would never take more than half second per move.
Yeah.
And it was for some time. And remember, there was no increments at that time, right? So they were playing normal games.
The clock's
And Vaganyan, who had white pieces and extra piece, he was also playing fairly fast, but he had to create something. He had to outplay because he has an extra piece, really.
Right.
Tal wouldn't worry about anything. He was just slowly moving his knight from one place to another. So, furthermore, Vaganyan failed to exchange even 1 single pawn. Somehow it was impossible. He was trying to simplify. Impossible. So it's still complicated position. Tal is down a piece. Slowly, he equalized him on time. At the end of the result was that he actually won on time. With piece down. I never seen anything like that. It's just the most incredible thing.
Yeah.
And, yes.
So since you mentioned Walter Brown, give me leave to tell my one concentration story.
Yes.
So, first round of the 1978 U.S. Championship, I had the mindset, okay, I'm on the country's biggest stage. I got to play and concentrate. I'm playing Leonid Shamkovich, who reminded me of the advice of the Soviet School of Chess: sit in your chair and concentrate. So I did. I sat for 5 hours without getting up from the board once. I concentrated. I played a beautiful game that was in the New York Times the next day. I won in 40 moves against him with the C3 Sicilian. So I got up from the chair when he graciously resigned, and I looked over my shoulder. I finally decided I'd take a look at the other games. I had not let any distracting thought, not even about the other games, get into my head. And I saw that Walter Brown and Larry Christensen's game was set up to the initial position. And I said, I wonder what happened in the game. So I asked someone, and they looked at me in stark disbelief, saying, didn't you hear what was going on with Brown shouting just in the foreground behind the audience about the dispute over lighting, and he's forfeited and left the tournament? And I had really not heard it at all. I completely shut it out.
Credit to your powers of concentration.
And this is one of several stories I explained to my wife of how I can be completely oblivious to screaming kids.
I explained that to my wife too. Yes,
while working. So there.
I'm not ignoring you. I'm just not hearing you.
Right. So otherwise, yes. So otherwise, I might agree with what Sasha was saying. In the game, actually, Caruana did not. They've reached the time control, and Caruana is going after Black's B pawn, but he appears to have miscalculated, and the engine is just now saying that Firouzja is equal.
Wow.
So let's take one more look at it, since this is working. So entire screen. Here we go, and so this is the position now. And Black can equalize by playing the rook on the 7th rank. So what happened in the game since we last saw it is instead of playing knight g4 right away, Caruana played rook b7 and now played knight g4, which had the same effect, except White's rook is on b7. Now knight h6 check, king h8. And now here, this is funny from the engine. The engine actually prefers a line where White gives a repetition. That's because of hash table business going on. The right move here is h4, or put your rook back on c7 where it was. But h4 creates enough of a diversion that Black has to jettison the b pawn. Instead, White played the knight to bring the knight to d6, which looks very strong. Well, Black played f5, and now knight c4 to collect the b pawn. But apparently, Caruana has simply miscalculated something here.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah. So now it's Right. So what's going to happen now? It's not there's no more threats. So this game has taken a completely different turn.
I agree. Yeah.
And
nothing now.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to mention is a week ago, did you cover the Rapid Games for the World Championship match?
Partially.
Partially, okay.
Yeah.
Including the wonderful competitive moment of Ding Mirren's.
Let's do it next week. And next week we'll discuss also the end of this tournament. And in the meantime, have a great week. And looking forward to see you all next Saturday.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Next week I might not be there, though. Okay. All right.
Okay, good.
Or it'll be pre-record. I can. Okay.
Okay, we'll see about it.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.